Things are getting weird in Phoenix. Even with all the recent news around the NBA, we just had the NBA draft, we had a huge Mikal Bridges trade. The biggest piece of information that we've gotten recently is that Kevin Durant might not be in Phoenix for very much longer, and there are teams around the league, specifically Houston, that are gearing up to trade for him. And there are just a lot of different things being said publicly. Matt Ishbia has come out and said, as the owner of the Suns, Kevin Durant's staying, we want to keep KD. ESPN, Woj, all these outlets are confident and adamant in the fact that there is some frustration there in the camp with Kevin Durant in Phoenix. But the nice thing, if you're a Suns fan, is it's not like KD is a guy that has a history of doing something like this, right? Of changing teams and requesting trades and not spending very long at one particular place. Jokes aside, because this is Kevin Durant, because of the reports that we're getting, I think we have to take this situation seriously. Really quickly though, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Spades Plus. Now, for someone like me whose work schedule is all over the place, it is perfect for me to have a game that I can just kind of pop in and out of, and that is exactly what Spades Plus is for me. My wife and I will play against each other and get probably a little bit too competitive. I can play online as well for maybe a little bit more of an added challenge. Don't tell my wife that. And I can also compete in some challenging events with some cool prizes online as well. And as I'm kind of going in and out of the game, if I really want to try something different as well, they also have some really cool mini games in the Lucky Haul section as well. I just love that I have so many options. So if you want to get started today, you can download Spades Plus for free by clicking the link in the description and the pinned comment, or scan the QR code and get 10,000 coins to get started. Again, that link is in the description, in the pinned comment, and the QR code is scannable as well. And thank you again to Spades Plus for sponsoring this video. Now, before we get to the Rockets' hand in this whole Kevin Durant situation, we have to evaluate where the Suns are at with KD right now, because I think a lot of people were assuming that there's just no way that this is going to happen because KD hasn't been there that long. He's only been there like a year and a half, basically. Well, he only spent 3.5 years in Brooklyn, and for the last half of that, for the last half year, for the last 6 months, he had already requested a trade and already wanted to be on his way out. And he only spent 3 years in Golden State. So the concept of Kevin Durant getting traded this offseason or at the trade deadline or next offseason is not crazy, especially when you consider that he is going to start to have some leverage as his contract begins to come up here in a couple of years. And even though I'm sure the ownership in Phoenix is confident that they're still going to have a championship contender this season, that feels pretty unlikely given the strength of the Western Conference. The Bradley Beal thing did not work at all. He didn't play nearly enough games, and it's clear that the rest of the roster around their 3 stars, or their 2 stars, and then also Bradley Beal, is just not good enough when you have as strong of a conference as the West is right now. And that can lead to a lot of frustration because KD was still awesome last year, and it just didn't really matter. He still had to carry so much of the burden for that team, and of course Devin Booker was really good as well, but it feels eerily similar to the situation that he asked out of in Brooklyn. Like, everybody remembers when Kevin Durant basically said publicly that all the other players on the Nets suck because their guys are hurt, they traded some people away, and they just didn't build the team properly. How is this situation in Phoenix all that much different than what happened with the Nets? And even in just his first full season last year, there were reports during the season that he wasn't particularly happy with the way the offense was being run. He wasn't being utilized enough. He was frustrated with the coaching situation. He was frustrated with the organization, with the team itself. We know that this is a guy that can allow those frustrations to build up, and typically when they do, he ends up on a new team. Like, who's to say that Beal isn't that healthy to begin the year? The West is really strong, and Phoenix is like 20-18 partway through the season. Then all of a sudden there's going to be this pressure on this team all of the time to potentially move on from KD, to potentially move on from Devin Booker. And that pressure has been applied by the Houston Rockets. Because in one of the most interesting moves that we've had in the NBA in a while, Houston made the decision to prioritize getting Phoenix's first-round picks in exchange for the Nets' own first-round picks. After Brooklyn traded away Mikal Bridges, it was clear they wanted to tank. Those were kind of coinciding moves, and they wanted those Phoenix picks because they know that that is the most valuable thing they could possibly have if they did want to go out and try and get Kevin Durant or Devin Booker, which to me is absolutely brilliant if you're Houston. You might not actually get either of those guys. Those might just be pretty good assets to have. But if at whatever point, whatever likelihood there is that over the next 6 to 18 months, Kevin Durant no longer wants to be a Phoenix Sun, the conversation in terms of a trade, whether it be for Devin Booker, whether it be for Kevin Durant, has to begin with the Houston Rockets. That has to be your first call. They control the first round picks that you would want in exchange in any scenario in which you're trading away Booker or KD. You have to get those picks back. And that is the situation that Houston has put themselves in. And because they have those picks, because they're clearly in the market for a star, they have also put this weird pressure on the Suns to make sure that things are going well with KD, because there's all this attention on him possibly going to Houston. And it creates this really interesting trend that we might see over the next couple of seasons in the NBA, because teams love to trade away all of these future first-round picks. We just saw it with the Knicks. The Nets have done it a ton. Minnesota did it with Rudy Gobert, on and on and on. Trading away all of these future first-round picks, sometimes unprotected, has become much more common in the NBA, and not even always for stars, as was the case for the Bridges and Gobert trades. And if you are one of these teams that maybe is rebuilding, or you have some of these future picks, and you start to maybe improve and things start to fall apart the way they might potentially in Phoenix, having access to those first round picks is the best possible thing you could do. And it's so interesting because they're obviously valuable, because Phoenix might be bad in a couple of seasons. So they're valuable to other teams, but they're so much more valuable to Phoenix than they would be to any other team, to the point that the conversation has to begin with you. It's why San Antonio, the conversation in terms of a Trae Young trade in Atlanta, has to begin with them, because they have Atlanta's picks. It's why the Nets were never going to trade away Mikal Bridges unless they were able to get their own picks back from Houston. It's absolutely brilliant. Now, with all that being said, is Kevin Durant actually going to get traded? Is he going to get traded soon? In terms of in this particular offseason, it is clear that Phoenix is moving forward with their group. They have said that publicly. They've said that privately to all these insiders, Woj, Shams, all these guys. That's their plan. But is it more likely now than it was a week ago that during this season, before the trade deadline, Kevin Durant could be on a different team? Absolutely. Because a scenario certainly exists in which Phoenix doesn't have the start to the year that they're hoping for, and Kevin Durant starts to get a little bit uneasy. Things start to get frustrating, and things can fall apart and change very quickly in the NBA. And the pressure that has been applied by the Houston Rockets, and potentially by some of these other teams that might be circling, trying to add Devin Booker, trying to add Kevin Durant, whichever piece Houston doesn't want, that pressure is going to be palpable, and it's going to be felt if things fall apart for Phoenix. Now, they certainly still are talented enough to win 50 to 55 games, even in a really strong Western Conference, depending on how the season goes. Maybe they make a couple of other additions, and suddenly they're in the conference finals. Like, that's a realistic outcome given the talent that Phoenix has assembled. But the Kevin Durant situation now mirrors very closely situations that we have seen in the past, both in Golden State as well as Brooklyn. And even though the guy's getting older, even though, you might not think that it would make sense for Houston to trade for him, he's still Kevin Durant. He's still one of the best 15 players in the entire league, and he's still someone that you have to prioritize if you are Phoenix trying to keep that guy in-house. Or maybe you could argue that they're actually better off dumping all these assets, getting their Suns picks back, and building towards the future. Download Spades Plus for free by clicking the link in the description and the pinned comment, or scan the QR code and get 10,000 coins to get started. Again, that link is in the description, in the pinned comment, and the QR code is scannable as well. And thank you again to Spades Plus for sponsoring this video.